All right, all right. Here we go. Episode 24 of Hitting the Road. We are with artist Tristan Tritt. Tristan, how you doing, man?
How's it going, Nate? Thank you so much for having me, man.
Dude, you bet, man. So we were kind of just bopping back and forth a second ago. So you're at home in Georgia, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Where so and you don't have to tell because I don't want people stalking you, but so you're kind of I gotta ask. So you're cl close to Atlanta, you Alpharetta, kind of like
Just outside of there, we're the next county over, Paulding County, which
okay.
born and raised, been in this area pretty much my whole life, and this is
Yeah.
really kind of like it's a great halfway point between, the music world, being in Nashville, constantly working out there, and then coming back to like a good small town and keeping you, down to earth. It's fantastic.
Love that, man. Dude, I've been talking to some artists lately, man, that they really it's funny because it used to be like Nashville or bust kind of mentality. Like you gotta
Absolutely.
you gotta go and stay and like whose couch are you sleeping on and all that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
but I've noticed a lot of artists I'm talking to, man, are actually kind of they're going back home, man, and they're splitting time and they maybe they'll go to Nashville for a week or something like that. But I mean they like their roots, man, and they don't like to say, is that kind of your vibe right now? It's like, man, I dig where I'm from.
It really is, and I think there's two sides of the coin because like someone, for instance, like my dad, he never commented, or I'm sorry, most people thought that he lived in Nashville throughout his career. He never lived there once, but the reality is like when you're constantly touring and you're on the road, wherever you lay your head is home. And I mean, there were times where he'd have to be out in Nashville or New York, and same thing with me. If I have to be in Nashville working with folks, that's one thing. But I think when you're kind of a road dog,
Yeah.
it's you don't really have to rely on Nashville as much. It's a great meeting point for people. It's great to meet new musicians and producers and stuff like that. But unless you're songwriting and you're just physically every single day trying to be around folks, it's one of those get in, get out kind of situations for me.
Yeah, yeah, man. No, and it's funny, man, because here's the thing, and I don't want to camp out here too long because like, you're your own person and I can, man, the more I listen to your stuff this week, man, I know you're your own dude, you're your own artist and but just addressing kind of the elephant in the room and then we'll just kind of shift and move on from that, man. But
Yeah.
you mentioned your dad. Tell me a little bit about, who your dad is and who he is to
My
you.
dad's yeah, my dad's Travis Tritt, and he's honestly one of the biggest reasons I got into music. And I know that sounds cliche, but he was always incredibly supportive from the very beginning, but supportive in the right way. I think like, different parenting styles, obviously, but he really just let me figure it out. Like he was
Yeah,
always there if I needed him for advice or for something, but he really wanted me to like figure it out on my own. That way I didn't have to rely on anyone else to, start, calling people for gigs, start, learning how to operate gear equipment, building up a band. So it was really fortunate for me to not only have someone who was in the music industry, but someone who was supportive in the right way, that they weren't a helicopter parent.
sure, sure.
And it was really cool because now, like, 5 years in, there's a lot more of a sense of independence that I have, and that took a lot of work, but he was a big part of that. And every time, I would fall flat on my face, and whether it was call him or sit down and have a
Mm.
bourbon cigar with him and just be like, yo, let's hash this out. Like, help me, tell me how do I work
Yeah,
with all these these little intricacies that the music industry has always had, but it's especially now with social media, it's
yeah.
moving so fast that you have to be really willing to change your strategies, not change as a person, but like what worked today may not work tomorrow, and that's a very real statement now more than ever because it's constantly going.
Sure. And that's, man, that's such a good point, man, about the music industry because it's like your dad, I mean, like, whenever you hear Travis Tritt song, you know it. I mean, you hear that, you hear that it's a, unmistakable kind of thing. But man, he was kind of, and I think about this in terms of like Michael Jordan, who he was in the 90s. His
Hmm.
career is different than LeBron James in 2025, right? Because Michael didn't have to deal with all the social media stuff and all this kind of, but LeBron is like, it's just a whole different animal, right? And so it's like you're having to navigate music in a way that your dad didn't. So it's like, you're learning things from him, but you're also like, man, this is such a different beast right
Well,
now.
he'd be one of the first people to tell you, and he's repeated it over and over. He goes, "I really don't know if I can make it today," which to me that's a
Wow.
crazy claim to say,
Yeah.
but it is. I understand from his perspective, especially, he got signed in '89. That's a 40-year difference
Sure.
of almost of like what the difference is in technology, in how the industry runs, how contracts are made. Like
Yeah.
it's so vastly different now. And like even me 5 years ago, like I fought tooth and claw not to go the whole social media route, which was stupid because I obviously like I should have seen it coming. But nowadays, you kind of have to establish yourself on social media first before people even pay attention to the music, which is backwards. But it's, I mean, it's just part of the game now.
Yeah. Well, man, so and I'm going to back up a little bit too. So it's like I'm in a text thread with some guys. I don't know if you're a football fan, man, college football. You know, I know you're in
Oh,
Georgia.
absolutely,
Georgia's a
absolutely.
big deal, obviously the Bulldogs, man. But so I'm in a text thread with some guys, some friends of mine from Texas, and we'll talk about how our Longhorns are doing, kind of thing. And somebody texted something the other day. They're like, man, if and all love, by the way, to Archie Manning, right? But it's like somebody said, man, if his last name was Jones, he wouldn't be the starting quarterback at the University of Texas. And man, it hurt me for Arch, man, because it's like, dude, I'm pulling for you, man. You're a good quarterback, bro. It's like, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because, like, he comes from that family, man. He comes from that background, and it's like when that name is on the back of your jersey,
Hmm.
it just changes kind of the way people perceive you and all that kind of stuff. And you coming from a family in a similar vein, like, I guess growing up, man, before you picked up an instrument, before you did the thing, like, did you play t-ball? Did you do the basketball thing? Like, did you have the jersey with a name on the back? And like, I guess what I'm saying is like, did people kind of hold you to a different standard kind of based on, maybe what your last name was?
Absolutely. And the benefit at least I have coming from a music world is that's a subjective world. You know, for one person they
Yeah,
may absolutely love this artist and the next person's like I don't get it. Sports is a lot more of a meritocracy where it's based off statistics and statistics alone. Like the
yeah,
numbers do matter.
totally.
So that's a lot more pressure than I've ever had to deal with. But yeah, growing up, I played t-ball, little league, and all that stuff. Occasionally had my dad coaching third base. But there was, especially growing up in a small town, it's not like I'm living in Nashville where, every third person you meet is somehow involved in the music industry.
Sure.
It's still a very kind of exotic career choice out here.
Right.
So that was, it was kind of something that it was always over my shoulder, but I tend to not think about it as much, or I
Sure.
tried not to.
Sure.
But yeah, the I couldn't imagine what, the Manning family has to go through, or just like sports dynasties like that. Like I couldn't imagine having to be Tom
Sure.
Brady's kid or LeBron's
Oh, yeah.
growing up and being like, oh my, like that shadow is crazy because it truly is based off your statistics. It like
Totally.
it's a wild. So, props to them for dealing with the pressure. But I understand, especially if you're going to compete in the SEC, you better be tough.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. Well, so man, I heard you tell a story and I feel like it's worth telling again because it sounds wild. And then I'm going to pivot to a question here. But like you mentioned, I think before, man, that like you had been in the sixth grade. You went down to visit family. And dude, you got to tell this because I'm gonna butcher it, but you played with wolves. Your grandfather
Mm.
gave you kind of an exotic gift. I mean, tell me a little bit about that because that just sounds nuts. And then
So
I'm
my
gonna yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom's side of the family is all from a little place called Leesburg, Florida, and
Okay.
they moved out there. My mom moved to the States when she was, I think, 11 years old. She grew up in Nairobi, Kenya. Had a very
Oh wow.
strange growing up, but very cool life.
Right.
My grandpa was from Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Awesome folks, but yeah, my uncle had two pet they were wolf dogs, but they're like 70-80% wolves, so had those forever, and that for me was nothing to go out there every summer and play with them. And then that same summer, right when I was about to start my first year at this brand new school, didn't know anybody. They asked me what I did over the summer. I told them just very point blank, I play with my uncle's wolves and stuff. And then my birthday's June 16th, so my grandpa knew that I wanted this, like it was like an iguana almost. So he comes to the house and he's got his hands behind his back. He's like, "Hey, I got you a gift." He goes, "I don't think it's exactly what you wanted, but it's something close." And he was
Yeah.
just he ran a hunting camp for years, was always great with animals. Like he was just a one of a kind guy. He proceeds to pull out from his back like an 11-inch gator with its
Okay.
mouth taped and hands it over to me. I'm like, what do I do with this? But
Yeah.
I told that story the first day of my of sixth grade at this new school, and they thought I was a compulsive liar, so they sent me to the counselor's office and had me basically call my parents and confirm all this. And I was like, what? What?
Yeah, dude. I mean, well, to get the reason I wanted you to tell that story too, man, is because like, it is funny, man, whenever you've got I think we've all got a story that just almost sounds surreal. I think we've all got them, right? Where it's just like,
Mhm.
man, no one's gonna believe me if if I told it, but as you kind of became an artist, man, and I noticed it even like in a song, like the song "Wannabe," right? Like there's such I want to say a vulnerability and almost like a very like an honest truth that kind of comes through. It seems like, and I'd love for you to tell me about that a little bit because um, it's almost like, you're coming from a perspective of like, hey, like this is the reality, man. This is the reality of me as an artist and who, kind of what I'm setting out to be. I mean, I'd love to hear just kind of like, even as you approach songwriting and being a truth teller, man, like what does that for you look like?
Uh, Wannabe was a very unique kind of song because typically when I'm writing, I like to come with 90% of the song prepared and then, build up the melody. And I'll typically work with one other producer and just build up the song from there. But I was on the road with my band and I just started, going on my notes and just typing random stuff, lines that I thought were unique or something that stood out to me. And one of them, the first one that stood out to me was neck deep, head above the water, I'm too
Yeah,
short on the shoulders of my father,
great line. Yeah.
and that was pretty much all I had. And when I brought it, I was working with a guy in Nashville named Brad Wagner, and he had this concept at first of wannabe, but it was almost a braggadocious type sense, like people want to be me. And I was like, I like the wordplay on that, but I think in terms of like my sense of humor, the self-deprecation and stuff like that, I would much more lean into like the negative aspect of what people call me,
Sure.
and sort of just acknowledge that, and like the realities too, not just from a music sense, but like anyone who's had a father, fortunate enough to still have their father, like
Mm,
there's always that looming shadow that a child or a son has, particularly with their dad. And I think that's something that I really wanted to hit on, and it was just a very important thing for me to get off my chest and release right around Father's Day.
ooh,
Just and tell that story. And that still to this day is one of my favorite songs of all time because of how emotional it was writing that. Like there was a lot
yeah,
more truth that came out of it than the self-deprecating humor that I
sure.
wanted to come out. And that it was very unique.
Well, and man, I'll say that it's songs like that that I feel like as I listen more and more, like really
Mhm.
showcase kind of your voice, your voice and just even the way that you emote, I think in that song too, and it's
Mhm.
like and it's funny because I bring up the Arch Manning thing again. It's just like, um because you want to know like, man, can he play? Can he ball, right? Can he hit the receiver in the slot, whatever. Man, but it's like, with you, it's kind of like, man, if you didn't know what family tree you came from, you'd be like, man, this dude's got the chops. He can more than hold his own, man. And I felt like that was something that stood out. So if your last name had been Johnson or Smith, man, it was this guy, he's got it, man. And so that was something that I really enjoyed about your sound. And so something like that, I'm just kind of curious, like, because you've been pretty clear, it seems like on social media too, man, about, everybody wants to kind of know what genre, you kind of
Mhm.
fit in or whatever. I don't want to place you in a genre. I mean, for me, it leans more kind of that, kind of rock kind of sound. But I
Mhm.
mean, like, man, who were some people that influenced you beyond, your upbringing and all that? I mean, who are people that you're listening to and people that are influencing you?
Still to this day, I have a hard time kind of dipping my toes into the modern zeitgeist of sound. Like
Yeah.
I'm always obsessed with guys, from the 70s and 80s. Massive Tom Petty fan, obviously, with Southern accent coming out. That
Yeah.
was something I always wanted to do, was do a Tom Petty song. And even guys like, God rest his soul, Ozzy Osbourne, and the
Mm.
influence that Black Sabbath gave to me and all these different bands, they were always, I think one thing they all had in common was they were never particularly one sound. Like for instance, with Black Sabbath, you had a song like Changes, or you had with Ozzy, Mama, I'm Coming Home, things
Yeah.
that weren't particularly the sound that everyone thought, like Crazy Train or Iron Man or something. Tom Petty was the same thing. He had a very difficult time in the beginning being labeled as one thing or another. Some people called him New Wave, some people called him Southern Rock. But I think musically, especially as a solo artist, I'm never standing in the same river twice, and how I feel today may not be the same as I feel tomorrow. So the music needs to represent that moment in time specifically. So if that means it's more blues based, or it's more R&B based, or more reggae based, or whatever, that's that moment in time. It's a snapshot of how
Mm.
I'm feeling at that moment, the influences of what I'm listening to now, and then that's it.
Yeah.
You move on, and it's not this permanent, oh, I'm going to keep making this sound consistently. And I understand from a listener's aspect, especially in the beginning, like it's easier when someone's in a category and you can check it
Yep.
off.
Yep.
because it makes you it gives you a sense of like, oh, I know who this person is.
Right.
But I think nowadays more than ever, especially the way we listen to music, with it being, through streaming and stuff, you're switching up genres every other song, it seems like.
Yeah.
And look at the success of festivals.
Yeah.
It's one minute you've got a country artist, then you got a rapper, then you got, a rock band.
Totally.
I think that's a lot more of what 2025 is for music, is just like it's kind of it's just up in the air.
Yeah.
And I want my music to reflect that too, because I think it shows off your chops as well, if as long as you're able to do it correctly and authentically. Like, I don't want to be a chameleon where I try to sound like those people
Sure.
if I'm trying to cover or take the influence from them. But there's such a wealth of knowledge with all of these artists that have ever, put out their music in the last 100 years, that it's like it's stupid just to stick in one particular lane, I'd much
Yeah.
rather explore everything.
No, absolutely. And and I've said this before because it's like I think that and I don't know about you, but there are times where, you'll hear maybe a debut, record from an artist or something like that.
Mhm.
And then that second record comes out and you're so excited, man, to listen to it and put your ears in it, on it and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't sound anything like the first project.
Mhm.
And there have been times for me as a music listener, I'm like, no, this kind of sucks because like I need you to be what you were on that first record. I need you to give me
Right,
more of that, right?
right.
And so it's like there's this we forget, I think, as consumers of music sometimes that that there's a blank canvas that an artist sits down with almost every time,
Mhm.
and it's going to look different. It may not look the same. And I guess my curiosity for you is like as you kind of build out, even now as a young artist, kind of build out your sound and all that kind of stuff, like how do you approach the creative process? And how does that even the songwriting, how does that inform maybe even kind of record to record, project to project? Like how are you kind of what's kind of the jump off point every time?
I think producers are a big indicator of that, because a producer in the music world, for those who don't know, it's the musical equivalent of a director. So you're kind of going through their vision that they're building alongside yours. Which, for instance, like with Tyler Childers' newest record,
Mm,
he worked with Rick Rubin, so it's gonna sound like a Rick
right.
Rubin record,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And just me bouncing around with a lot of different producers, that's really helped change the direction of the songwriting, as well as the production, as well as the sound, because some of them, they're a lot more analog based. A lot of them, are now a lot more digital based. It's all based on their forte. So working with different producers has really helped me um, expand my understanding of like, oh, this is how you can write a song, or also this is a different tactic or strategy you can to, get the same to get a different thing out with the same sort of tools that you've had from the beginning. But I don't know. Every time I write a song, my biggest thing is just make it authentic, whether it's the subject matter or whatever. I just want to make sure the performance is as real as possible and as
Yeah.
raw as I can make it.
Yeah, man. And so, it's funny because it's like I'll see some artists sometimes they'll work with maybe a producer and they've got great chemistry. And maybe they work together for two or three projects and then it's just
Hmm.
like, hey, let's change it up a little bit or maybe the artist says, hey, I kind of want to maybe just come at it from a different perspective this time. And nothing against you. You're great. You're wonderful. I just want to work with this guy this time and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, with you, man, and like the projects that you've worked on in the past, but also the projects you want to work on in the future, how do you kind of make those selections? Like who are you looking for in a producer and how are you making those selections of like, man, I think that guy or that girl, I think they're going to line up with the kind of music that I want to make and art I want to create.
A lot of it is just vibe. It's talking to them beforehand, kind of seeing if there's a chemistry there, and just figuring out, hey, do we, like, just on a person to person level, do we sort of get along? And
Yeah.
we can have completely total opposite perspectives on things, but it's like if that person can sort of see my vision or I can see theirs and we can build upon that, then that's pretty much how I make my decision with working with them. And for the most part, I've been very fortunate to very quickly meet people and be like, okay, like this is gonna work, and then we just kind of sit around, throw some stuff together, and it's like, okay, I see where you're going with that, or they see where I'm going with it, and they build onto it and add things that I never even saw coming, and that
Yeah.
makes it, because I try not to be a control freak in the studio, especially. Like there's things I won't compromise on,
Mm.
but when it comes to the production side, I let what people are the best at control it.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
it's just how I operate, because there's so much that goes into making a song.
Sure.
Uh, I'd much rather focus on the things that are my strong suit and let the other individual aspects be taken care of by people that really know what they're doing, whether it's building up the tracks or handling, the mix. I used to want to be a part of all of that, and I just realized like I was spreading myself too thin, and it was honestly
Mhm.
not, it wasn't becoming the song that I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And there's a beauty of surrendering and kind of
Woo.
letting those people who really know what they're doing just take the reins, and I trust them. And to me that's a big thing of like creating a relationship where you'll come back to it, is just it's the trust. You
Yeah.
have to trust them.
Yeah, that's a good word, man. I think even for people maybe that aren't musicians necessarily, it's just it's so hard to surrender that control to somebody that maybe has a different perspective than we do, and just and letting them do what they do well. I think
Absolutely.
I think that's a good word, man. And it's funny because you mentioned the Tyler Childers, Rick Rubin, and Rick Rubin obviously, man, like people. I mean, he was doing the Run DMC stuff, and I mean, he's just. And the funny thing is like he had said, man, I never pushed a button or I never did,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
he's
he's
not
got
an engineer.
no, man. But the funny thing is like, and I hate to use this word sometimes, man, but it's like, people talk about aura, and it's just like Rick Rubin seems like he's got that, that aura about him a little bit. But it's like, when you're creating, and I'd be curious for you, like, when you're in an environment and you're trusting somebody with your project, you're trusting them with your direction, and you mentioned like the vibe that they, you want to make sure that they're vibing with you and you're vibing with them. And you want to give them that control. You want to surrender that control. And you mentioned the things that you feel like you do well. I'm kind of curious, man, what you feel like those things are that you do well, and just surrendering that control to them so they can do what they do well.
My biggest thing, I love writing verses. I love telling a story. My weak suit or my weaknesses really do lie in a lot of times not focusing enough on the melody. I'm too much of a wordy person to,
Yeah.
try and build that up. And the melody is the most important part because that's what's going to stick with the person listening for the first time. And I've said, I haven't coined the phrase. I wish I was smart enough to come up with this, but it's one of the most true things I've ever heard. Um, when you're happy or you hear the melody, when you're sad you hear the lyrics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when
All
i
right.
when i come from a place of melancholy or from storytelling, I want people to eventually, if they've listened to the song multiple times, hear the little
Mm.
stories within it or hear the little lines where it's like, oh, I didn't catch that at first. That's
Yeah.
always been my strong suit. But like just the most basic things of really building up sort of an earworm or focusing on the melody, that takes me time,
Yeah.
most of the time, to kind of figure it out. And a good producer, if they know what they're doing, they can help kind of hone me in and be like, okay, hey, focus on this, because there is such a thing as too many options,
Mm.
and then you get, paralysis through analysis or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So having someone being able to rein you in and be like, okay, this is good, but
Yeah.
you're going off the rails on this one. Focus on this. Make sure we've got the melody set up for the chorus or whatever, and then let's come back to the lyrics, and then you can, let me loose. And that's been super helpful.
Yeah, man. And again, I think there's such a good word there too, because you mentioned I think that for a lot of us, man, we don't see our blind spots. We don't see the things that we're not necessarily great at. But you mentioned like hey, the things that I'm not necessarily great at, and I do think that there's such a beauty to that self-awareness that you kind of are showing right now. Like that, it's just like, hey, man, I can write a banger here. I'm great at writing this, the line.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm kind of man, I need a little nudge. I need a little help here, man, because I think, dude, I'm of the mind sometimes, just the way that I'm wired, man, there's nothing I can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is foolishness, by the way. Like because I convince myself that I can do it all. And so what happens is for me, man, it's just like because I think I can do it all, I'm pulling all the levers, and then it's just overload, man. And so do you feel like, man, if you were the guy that's just writing, producing, playing on everything, like how much different would the product be if you felt like you were trying to pull all the levers yourself?
I think it would be impossible just because of like a big thing that I've had to become weary of is like perfectionism, which
Yeah.
is first off, it's an impossible goal. It's an ambitious one, but it's impossible. And I think that a lot of people, the reason they don't get something out that they've tried to create, whether it's music or any type of craft that they're going after, is because they're focused too much on the concept that's it's got to be perfect for it to come out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've talked to anyone, like for instance, I've been talking to a lot of YouTubers and guys that are content creators, and my biggest question has always been like, how did you start? Like, how did you, because you see where they're at now, millions of subscribers, the production's fantastic. It's like, dude, I was just posting this on, a crappy computer lens back in 2007 or whatever, and like there was no rhyme or reason, but like it was
Yeah.
just going after it over and over. And in the when I first started doing music in 2020, I kind of had that same feeling where I was like, no, 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 I have to release basically the White Album from the Beatles, which is an impossible goal,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's got to be that good. And then
Yeah.
I realized, okay, like there's people who are cranking out all these songs. If I'm gonna try and compete and just right now be in the visibility game, not even the music game, but visibility, do people even know who I am? Because I could write the greatest album ever. If no one
Mm.
knows it exists
Yeah.
because I'm not going out there and promoting, or I'm not out there being consistent, and I'm just hyping up, oh, this is gonna be the next product that, and I don't do anything, you're you're just stagnant. And
Yeah.
I don't like being stagnant. So I really had to, once again, to that word, surrender a
Yeah.
lot of that expectation that I had in this perfectionism, because otherwise it never would have happened. I never would have done it.
Yeah, no, and again, man, that's such a good word. And so let me ask you this because I wrote this down earlier because I was like, man, I really want to ask this question. I have to know the story here. I couldn't tell if you'd reposted. I think you reposted it on socials. And this is for me is this is just outlandish, dude. But you had posted something. Theo Vaughn had shared something that I got to know your feelings on this because he had Post Malone on his show. He pulls up
Oh
this,
yeah.
he pulls up this picture, I guess it was Post Malone's, kind of costume that they were selling online or whatever. And he said, "No,
Mhm.
dude." He said he said, "Dude, that's Tristan Tritt." And dude, when I saw that, I was like, that is so bizarre, dude. And anyway, like, but it seemed like you had a really great sense of humor about it, man. And Post was like, dude, I'm not connecting the dots or whatever. But like Theo's like, nah, dude. But it seemed like you and Theo even have maybe a relationship that, I mean, I don't know. Did y'all know each other even before that? Because
I have, yes. So
okay,
I knew Theo beforehand, and he really is that guy. Like he as funny as he is on social media or his podcast. That's how he talks in person. So that's another reason. Number one, I love Theo, and I
yeah,
also love comedians because they're pros at that. And I
yeah,
love when they don't have this like different personality that they are off camera. Like he's exactly that way. So when I saw that video, I was dying laughing to begin with because I was like, I know how he is, and like he's
yeah,
gonna he's gonna he's gonna flame me or whatever. But
yeah.
he does it in it from the best place, and I
Yeah, it was
love
all
that kind of
sweet.
humor.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
and
yeah, totally.
so it totally helped me out too because a lot of people were like, "Who the hell is Tristan Tritt?" And I was like, "Hey,"
Well,
like you know.
where did you guys meet? Where did y'all, I mean, like when did y'all originally meet?
I met him at an event probably in 2021 or 2022
Okay.
with a bunch of different people, and he was coming in with Jimmy John's, the guy who created the sandwich chain,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've known Jimmy John's for a while too. So he introduced us to Theo, and Theo was just fantastic. And a couple months later, had my dad on his podcast, and like really became cool with the family.
That's
And
good.
he really is just a sweetheart of a guy. But that was one of those things too. They're like not even a year after that video I posted, Dad's performing at the 100th anniversary of the Opry with Post
Mm,
Malone, and then I
yeah.
get to meet Post in person, like with Theo,
Yeah.
mind you. So that was just like a full circle
Well,
moment,
yeah.
and it was hilarious. But yeah, that video right there really it really opened up a lot of doors for me just with publicity. So I'm incredibly thankful for that, and I'm thankful for Theo as well.
Yeah, man. Well, it's just, and I think I told you before we popped on, man, you've got a great sense of humor, and I can tell that you just didn't take that, too seriously, and actually had a lot of fun with it. But, well, man, let me ask you this, and I appreciate you taking the time. So I know we mentioned you've got a show in South Carolina later this month, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, what do we know about it?
Just closing out the year. It's the day before Thanksgiving, so November 26th at Doc's Tavern out in Greenville, South Carolina. I think I'm opening for a guy named Mickey Avalon, he's kind of all over the place,
Okay.
like rapper, rocker guy. But he's fantastic and very, very funny guy. So gonna be opening up for him and closing out 2026, and then hopefully starting back. I believe our first show of the years is January 30th in Summerfield, Florida, and then
Oh,
hopefully we're
wow.
just off to the races once again. Like I don't want to be sitting around for too long because
Totally.
you go through that holiday lull and everyone's kind of recovering and coming back,
Yeah,
financially especially too. But
totally.
we want to be on the road and playing as many shows as possible next year.
Yeah, man. Well, so I mean, as far as like new music projects, I mean, are you already working on new music projects, and when do you hope to put those out?
Always working on it. We were trying to get something in before the end of the year, but unfortunately, just with the timing, we got the Southern Accents cover, the Tom Petty one, out in October or just before the first week of October. Um, and unfortunately, now we're going into the holiday season. You can't compete with Christmas music, so we're gonna wait probably until the end of January to release the next song. But I'm hoping, once again, this might be too ambitious, but to release a song at least every single month
Yeah.
of 2026 and really make sure that I'm cranking out as many songs as possible while being on the road.
No, I love that, man. Man, we're rooting for you. We're pulling for you, man. I just wanted to tell you too, and I appreciate this very much, man. Like, and you're very cerebral, dude. And I didn't expect you to be as heady as you are, dude. And and that's not to say that I didn't expect you to be heady, but man, just like you're a very savvy, individual, man. And I just appreciate you being so articulate in the way that you describe your career. But man, we're pulling for you, man. If you need anything at all, let me know, dude. And thanks again for joining us on Hitting the Road.
Hey, thank you so much, brother, for having me.
You bet. Thanks.